The importance of thinking fast and slow. Some books give you tools, some give you inspiration, and then there are rare books that change the way you see your own mind. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, published in 2011, is one of those rare books. Written by a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, it has become a cornerstone for anyone who wants to understand how humans think, decide, and act. Why is this book so important? Because it reveals a simple but powerful truth. Your brain has two systems of thinking. System 1, fast, automatic, emotional, and intuitive. System 2, slow, deliberate, logical, and effortful. We like to think of ourselves as rational beings. But in reality, System 1 often runs the show. It makes quick judgments, jumps to conclusions, and relies on mental shortcuts. Sometimes that's helpful. It keeps us alive, helps us respond instantly, and saves energy. But other times, it leads to biases, mistakes, and flawed decisions. Kahneman's book is important because it exposes these invisible forces. It shows us why smart people make dumb mistakes, why we misjudge risks, why we get overconfident, why we fall for illusions, and why our decisions are often less rational than we believe. In a world where choices about health, money, careers, and relationships shape our lives, understanding these hidden biases is essential. Another reason this book matters is its practical impact. It isn't just theory, it has reshaped economics, business, politics, medicine, and even law. The insights from Thinking Fast and Slow gave birth to the field of behavioral economics, which studies how psychology influences financial and social decisions. Governments use these ideas to design policies. Companies use them to improve marketing. Investors use them to avoid costly mistakes. For the everyday reader, the importance is even more personal. It helps you become aware of your own mind traps. When you know your brain's shortcuts, you can pause before making impulsive choices. You can challenge your assumptions. You can become a clearer thinker, a better decision maker, and a wiser person. And in today's fast-moving, information-saturated world, this is more important than ever. We are bombarded with headlines, advertisements, and social media feeds, all designed to trigger fast, emotional thinking. If we rely only on System 1, we risk being manipulated, misled, and overwhelmed. Kahneman's book teaches us when to slow down, engage System 2, and think carefully. Ultimately, the importance of thinking fast and slow lies in its ability to give you a mirror for your mind. It shows you how you think, why you think that way, and what you can do to improve. And once you see your own thought patterns clearly, you gain an incredible advantage, not just in your career or finances, but in every area of life. This is why millions of readers, from students to CEOs, continue to study this book. It doesn't just make you smarter, it makes you wiser about your own mind. Behind Thinking Fast and Slow stands a remarkable man, Daniel Kahneman, psychologist, researcher, Nobel Prize laureate, and one of the greatest thinkers of our time. His life story and career explain why this book has such depth and credibility. Kahneman was born in 1934 in Tel Aviv, though he grew up in Paris during World War II. As a Jewish boy in Nazi-occupied France, he experienced fear, uncertainty, and loss at an early age. These formative experiences shaped his curiosity about human behavior, why people act as they do under stress, what drives courage, what fuels cruelty, and how individuals make choices when survival is at stake. After the war, his family moved to what later became Israel. Kahneman studied psychology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he developed a fascination with perception and judgment. He later earned his PhD at the University of California, Berkeley. One of the defining partnerships of his career was with Amos Tversky, another brilliant Israeli psychologist. Together, they challenged the dominant idea of the time that humans are fundamentally rational decision makers. Economists assumed that people carefully weigh costs and benefits before making choices. Kahneman and Tversky showed otherwise. Humans rely on shortcuts, mental biases, and emotions far more than logic. Their groundbreaking research led to the development of prospect theory, which explains how people perceive risk and make financial decisions. For this work, Kahneman was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. In 2002, a rare honor for a psychologist, since the prize is usually reserved for economists. Throughout his career, Kahneman held teaching and research positions at prestigious institutions, including Princeton University, UC Berkeley, and the Hebrew University. His work influenced fields far beyond psychology, from medicine and public policy to marketing and law. What makes Kahneman unique is not just his intellect, but his humility. He often describes himself as pessimistic about the quality of our judgment and admits he is just as vulnerable to biases as anyone else. This honesty makes his work relatable. He doesn't write from the perspective of a detached scientist looking down at others. He writes as a fellow human being trying to understand the mind's mysteries. Philosophically, Kahneman is both a realist and an optimist. He acknowledges the flaws in human thinking, our overconfidence, our susceptibility to illusions, our tendency to jump to conclusions. But he also believes that by understanding these flaws, we can design better systems, make wiser decisions, and reduce costly errors. His work is ultimately about empowerment through awareness. When Thinking Fast and Slow was published in 2011, it distilled decades of research into one accessible volume. The book became an international bestseller, praised for its clarity and depth. It introduced millions of readers to the two systems of thought, the catalog of cognitive biases, and the practical implications for daily life. Daniel Kahneman passed away in 2024 at the age of 90, but his legacy lives on. His insights have permanently reshaped psychology and economics, earning him recognition as one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th and 21st centuries. To know Kahneman is to know a man who spent his life asking, why do we think the way we do, and how can we think better? His journey from a child surviving war to a scientist, redefining how the world understands decision-making, embodies the very theme of his book, that human thought is both flawed and fascinating, and by studying it, we awaken the possibility of wisdom. Every great book is born from a need to answer a fundamental question. For Daniel Kahneman, the question was, why do humans smart, educated, well-intentioned people so often make irrational decisions? For centuries, philosophers and economists assumed that people are rational beings. The rational actor model dominated economics. Humans were thought to carefully weigh risks and rewards before choosing. But Kahneman, through decades of research with Amos Tversky, discovered a different truth. People don't always think logically. Instead, they rely on mental shortcuts, gut instincts, and emotional reactions. These shortcuts, though useful, often lead to predictable mistakes. The purpose of Thinking Fast and Slow is to expose these hidden processes and help us understand them. Kahneman wanted to show readers that our minds are governed by two systems of thought. System 1, fast, intuitive, automatic, emotional. System 2, slow, deliberate, logical, effortful. Both systems are essential. System 1 helps us survive, make quick judgments, and handle daily life without exhausting ourselves. System 2 allows us to analyze, plan, and reason carefully. The problem is that System 1 often dominates even in situations where careful thought is needed. This leads to errors of judgment, irrational choices, and costly biases. Kahneman's purpose was not to shame us for these flaws, but to make us aware of them. By recognizing when we are thinking fast versus when we should be thinking slow, we can catch ourselves, pause, and make wiser choices. Awareness, he believed, is the first step toward improvement. Another key purpose was to transform economics and public policy. Kahneman wanted leaders to understand that people don't always act in their best interest, even when choices seem clear. This insight helped give rise to behavioral economics, which has since influenced everything from retirement savings programs to healthcare policy. But his purpose was also deeply personal. He wanted ordinary people to use these insights to make better decisions in everyday life, choosing careers, managing money, navigating relationships, or even voting. If people understood how biases distort their thinking, they could avoid traps, reduce regret, and live more intentionally. At its heart, the book is about humility. Kahneman wanted us to accept that our brains are not perfect calculators. We are not as rational as we think we are. But that humility can become a strength. When we acknowledge our blind spots, we open the door to better choices, wiser systems, and more compassionate understanding of human behavior. So the purpose of thinking fast and slow is threefold: to explain the two systems of thought that shape our decisions, to reveal the biases and errors that distort judgment, to empower readers to think more carefully, design better choices, and ultimately live with greater wisdom. In short, Kahneman wrote this book to help us do what he spent his life doing, to see the mind more clearly, and in seeing, to choose more wisely. The key lessons, how to apply them, and real-life illustrations. 1. The two systems of thinking. The lesson. Kahneman's central framework is that the mind operates with two systems. System 1. Fast, intuitive, automatic, emotional. It makes snap judgments, recognizes patterns, and helps us navigate daily life effortlessly. System 2. Slow, deliberate, logical, effortful. It analyzes, questions, and reasons, but it takes energy and often feels tiring. Most of the time, System 1 runs the show. That's efficient, but it also means we're vulnerable to biases and mistakes. How to apply. Before making an important decision, pause and ask, am I relying too much on intuition here? Should I engage System 2? Use System 1 for routine matters, but reserve System 2 for decisions about money, health, or relationships. Practice mindfulness. Notice when you're jumping to conclusions. Illustration. When driving a familiar route, you're in System 1. But when solving a complex math problem, you need System 2. Problems arise when we use System 1, where System 2 is required, like investing impulsively or judging someone based on first impressions. 2. Cognitive biases. The traps of System 1. The lesson. System 1 often relies on shortcuts, which Kahneman calls after heuristics. They save time, but also lead to predictable errors, cognitive biases. Some key biases include anchoring, relying too heavily on the first piece of information we hear. Availability heuristic, judging likelihood by how easily examples come to mind. Confirmation bias, seeking information that confirms what we already believe. Overconfidence, believing we know more than we do. How to apply. When making decisions, deliberately seek disconfirming evidence. Am I being influenced by an anchor or vivid example that may not reflect reality? Slow down. When stakes are high, bias thrives in speed. Illustration. In one experiment, people asked to estimate the number of African nations in the UN gave higher numbers if a roulette wheel had just landed on 65 compared to when it landed on 10. That random number acted as an anchor. This shows how arbitrary influences can distort judgment without us realizing it. 3. Loss, aversion, and prospect theory. The lesson. Kahneman and Tversky discovered that losses loom larger than gains. Losing 100 feels more painful than gaining 100 feels pleasurable. This is why people often avoid risks, even when the odds are in their favor. How to apply. Recognize when fear of loss is preventing you from seizing a good opportunity. Frame choices differently. Instead of seeing it as a risk of losing, reframe it as a chance to win. In negotiations, understand that others will resist losses more strongly than they pursue gains. Structure your offer accordingly. Illustration. Investors often hold on to losing stocks too long because selling locks in a loss. They prefer to gamble on recovery rather than accept the pain of losing. Prospect theory explains this behavior and helps investors make rational choices. 4. The halo effect and first impressions. The lesson. System 1 tends to form quick impressions, then fills in details to match them. If someone seems confident, we assume they're competent. If a company has one successful product, we assume all its products are good. This is the halo effect. How to apply. Challenge first impressions. Ask yourself, what evidence actually supports this judgment? Separate one trait from others. For example, charisma does not equal competence. Delay snap judgments when possible. Illustration. Steve Jobs was famous for a reality distortion field. His charisma created a halo effect that made people believe in his ideas. While this sometimes drove innovation, it also blinded colleagues to flaws. 5. Overconfidence and the illusion of understanding. The lesson: humans are notoriously overconfident. We think we understand the past better than we really do, and we believe we can predict the future more accurately than we can. Kahneman calls this the illusion of understanding. How to apply. In planning, use the outside view. Look at how similar projects fared, rather than trusting your gut. Assume uncertainty. Ask, what could go wrong? What don't I know? Make decisions probabilistically. Think in terms of odds, not certainties. Illustration. Kahneman studied how experts, like financial analysts, often fail to outperform chance despite high confidence. Their predictions felt convincing, but weren't more accurate than random guesses. Awareness of overconfidence helps us stay humble. 6. The planning fallacy. The lesson: people consistently underestimate how long tasks will take, even when they know similar tasks have taken longer in the past. This is the planning fallacy. How to apply. Always double your initial time estimate for big projects. Ask, what happened the last time I attempted something similar? Build buffers into your plans. Illustration. Students asked to estimate when they'd finish their thesis almost always predicted earlier dates than reality. The same happens in business projects, leading to delays and overruns. By using the outside view, teams can plan more realistically. 7. The role of intuition. The lesson: not all intuition is bad. In fields where people have true expertise, chess, firefighting, surgery, intuition can be powerful. But in areas of uncertainty, finance, politics, intuition is often unreliable. How to apply. Trust intuition when you have years of experience in a domain with consistent feedback. Be skeptical of intuition in unpredictable environments. Balance intuition with analysis. Illustration. A firefighter once pulled his crew out of a house seconds before it collapsed, sensing something was wrong. His intuition was based on years of experience, detecting subtle cues. Contrast that with stock market predictions, where intuition is no more accurate than chance. 8. Experiencing self versus remembering self. The lesson: Kahneman distinguishes between two versions of ourselves. Experiencing self lives in the present moment, feels happiness and pain. Remembering self tells the story of our lives, and it often judges experiences differently. For example, a vacation may have many joyful moments, but if it ends badly, the remembering self calls it a bad trip. How to apply. Be aware that your memories are not always faithful reflections of experiences. When making choices, like medical treatments or vacations, decide whether to prioritize the experiencing self, moment-to-moment comfort, or the remembering self, lasting story. Design experiences that end well. Endings shape memory powerfully. Illustration. Patients undergoing painful medical procedures reported the overall experience as less awful if the procedure ended on a less painful note, even if the total duration was longer. This peak-end rule shows how memory can distort reality, pulling it all together. The lessons of thinking fast and slow can be summarized in 3 words. Awareness creates wisdom. Be aware of when you're in System 1 or System 2. Be aware of biases that distort judgment. Be aware of overconfidence and illusions of certainty. Be aware that your remembering self often edits reality. Once you know these truths, you can pause before deciding, question your assumptions, and design better choices. You won't eliminate biases, but you will reduce their power. And that small shift can change everything from how you invest, to how you plan, to how you live. When you finish Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, you realize something profound. Your mind is not a perfectly rational machine. It is a storyteller, a shortcut maker, a guesser. And yet, within that imperfection lies extraordinary potential. Kahneman's research humbles us. It shows that even the smartest people fall into traps, anchoring, overconfidence, loss aversion, planning fallacies. We are not immune to bias just because we know about it. Awareness is not a cure, but it is a compass. By recognizing our limits, we gain the power to make wiser choices. The final takeaway is this: slow down when it matters. Trust your fast, intuitive System 1 for everyday decisions, but don't let it rule the big ones. When the stakes are high, money, health, relationships, long-term plans, pause. Engage your slow, deliberate system 2. Ask better questions. Seek outside perspectives. Look for evidence instead of relying only on feelings. Kahneman also reminds us of the importance of humility. We think we understand the past, but our memories are flawed. We think we can predict the future, but uncertainty always remains. By embracing this humility, we can approach life not with arrogance, but with curiosity and openness. The beauty of this book is that it doesn't leave you discouraged about human flaws. It leaves you empowered. Because once you see your blind spots, you can begin to work around them. You can design your life in ways that support better choices, slowing down before big commitments, diversifying to protect against bias, creating systems that reduce the need for constant willpower. And perhaps the most inspiring lesson is that wisdom isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about knowing how your mind works. When you understand your fast and slow thinking, you don't just make better decisions, you live with greater awareness, patience, and clarity. Imagine a life where you don't rush blindly into mistakes, where you recognize when your intuition is misleading you, where you plan realistically, invest wisely, and make choices rooted not in fear, but in clarity. That's what Kahneman's work offers. Your thoughts shape your destiny, but only if you learn to master them. Don't let fast, impulsive thinking run your life unchecked. Use it when it serves you, but balance it with the discipline of slow, deliberate reflection. That balance is where wisdom lives. If this message inspired you, don't stop here. Subscribe to Awaken Greatness for more powerful lessons from the world's greatest books. And share your voice. What's one decision in your life where slowing down could make all the difference? Comment below. Your story might be the insight someone else needs today. This is your time. This is your opportunity. Welcome to Awaken Greatness.